human activity in those ecosystem. So we have Alejandro is a professor in biology science from the University of León. He has a wide experience, professional experience because during more than 30 years he has been working on different projects related with the preservation of natures and management of forests. So here you go.
Good morning. Many thanks to the organization for inviting me. And over half an hour, I'm going to tell you a little about what we do. My work is basically counting birds. It's a rather strange job. But in this context, I feel really at home because know that you understand me. My work is counting birds in a very special place, the Strait of Gibraltar. In this talk, I'm going to try to give you some idea of what the strait is, the follow-up of migration, and a little about migration, which is so spectacular. And also, I'll give you some ideas of the changes we have detected because we've been doing a follow-up for 25 years. I've been a volunteer for 10 years and 15 years counting birds as a professional. So the Strait of Gibraltar, as most of you know, is one of the most important places in the world for migratory birds. It's an absolutely spectacular place where migration is shown and can be seen in all its splendor. It's highly recommendable for any bird fan ornithologist. And the fact that this is so is due to various factors. On the one hand, because the strait is very well located, it's on the Palearctic African route, one of the great migratory systems of birds in the world, which channel thousands of birds who breed in Central and North Europe and spend the winter in the Mediterranean or south of the Sahara. So this is a great migratory corridor, and on this route, there's the western route, which we have in blue, which goes to Africa, and this channel goes through the Iberian Peninsula, and finally it gets to the strait, which is where they cross, the birds. It's also a geographical peculiarity because practically it's where Europe and Africa practically touch. It's the only point of union between the North Africa, the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. So here we see the natural funnel of the coast of Spain and of North Africa, where they come together. The 14 kilometers is the shortest distance between the two continents. So for most birds, it's no problem. And opposite the strait, there may be about 40 or 50 kilometers to the area. So there is a concentration of thousands or millions of birds every year. Here you have an image of the strait and the Spanish coast and how a bird's eye view, a bird who's going to cross there's Africa opposite, and Ceuta is to the left. Also, although it's a short distance for birds, especially for land birds, it's a problem because they're going to face the sea, which for them is something strange, flying over the sea. And also, there's a strange feature here, which is the wind of the Strait of Gibraltar. 60% of the days of the year, there's strong wind, which are faster than bird flying speed, and also birds that are from east-west that push them towards the Atlantic or towards the Mediterranean. And this means that it may become a real odyssey. So the strait is the strait is opened or closed by the wind. It may be a peaceful crossing or maybe hell for the birds. It's a place that attracts birds and attracts ornithologists and bird watchers and nature lovers. Every year, thousands of people go there. probably less than the people than there should be, but let's say it's a tourist objective, a goal for ornithologists. So we work with birds. It's not so much fun, but although we enjoy them, but we count birds because we use birds as sentinels, as indicators or thermometers of what's happening in nature, systems of the planet. We have found huge changes since the Industrial Revolution, a huge transformation of the planet from human activity, which has had a very serious effect on the planet. So we need to know what effect it is really having, and a way of approaching this is to studying the living creatures which live in it, and here we use birds as indicators. They're going to give us information about what's going on. Fortunately, the Strait has a lot of previous information. There's over a century there have been people who've made lists here, and the first census here were carried out in the 1970s, led by Francisco Bernis and his collaborators and many other. And this has given us previous information of 40 years before, which is very valuable today to see the changes which have occurred. On the other, also, the people of Gibraltar have a very detailed follow-up system, which it's in this context, in 1997, there was an attempt was made to start again the censuses that Bernis did in his day, and so the idea was a long-term follow-up of the birds, taking advantage of the strategic location with standard protocols of investment. So this takes the time, because logically for a follow-up program you have to know which species go by, when they go by, what time and when, and so that needs prior knowledge. It took us years, certainly. We had to make a lot of effort to know where the birds came in, where they left, the effect of the winds, because this determined where to place the observatories and then on what dates to go there. So we count the birds directly. So, but those figures, where do they come from? Well, we actually count them. We count them by one or by tens or by hundreds. We do it from observatories strategically placed in the main groups of birds through the strait. Here you can see the effort in timetables and days practically every day of the year. And what we do is we select the window of 80%. We take a sample of the migration, but we know that that sample is a very important part of migration, which may be 80% or more. Here you have the position of the main observatories we use, which many of you will know. There are the names. We also count seabirds. We have several follow-up programs of coast birds. We do specific campaigns during the periods of maximum migration, and also some specific campaigns for some species that are in danger of extinction, such as Cornish shearwater, and also the census of seabirds. The census are always carried out by professional ornithologists, a combination of ornithologists accompanied by volunteers. Volunteers take part every year. It includes both professionals and volunteers, and it's a good school for naturalists, and it's a good school for ornithologists. In just a few days, we can find thousands of birds from different species. This is the kind of information we look for, the normal information. And with this information, each year for each species, we obtain data of the magnitude of the passage, how many go by, as we repeat the same effort every year, the same observatories, the same tower, same days, then we can compare the numbers, also the migration periods, and also we take information on age and sex of the birds. We see if we can, and information on differential migration. And from here, we combine them with data which we take from other sources. For example, we've worked with radar, with special marking, with measurers, GPS, satellites, localizers. We have marking and trapping stations of perching birds. But this is very important because we need to know the area of influence, where they come from, the birds, and where they're going to. Because if we're doing a follow-up of the population and the calendars of passage, we also are interested in knowing what birds are increasing or decreasing, and so we need to mark them. We need to know where they go, and we also work with models and programs. And in recent years, we've also been taking biological samples of blood parasites, because we also work with this dispersal of disease, virus, for example, because birds have contact with other communities in Africa, and so we know that there are illnesses that are moved by migratory birds. As for the migration, the gliding birds which concentrate here because they have a special kind of flying. They take these thermals, these ascending currents, and these winds and these currents, they do not form over sea, or very rarely, and so most of the movement has to be over land by these birds. So the strait is like a funnel, because it's the nearest place to Africa. The main species, there are 5 which include 90% of the migration. So we have white storks, about 130, 150,000 cross every year. Black kites, which is the most abundant gliding species. In recent years, we are finding over 200,000. There's some honey buzzard, some booted eagle, short-toed eagle, griffon vultures, thousands of these vultures, especially juveniles, cross. And then with rather lower figures, but it's also important, we have black storks, Egyptian vultures, sparrowhawks, and in total, more or menos about 30 species that regularly pass through the strait. As we say, it's one of the most important places in the world for short-toed eagles or black kites, but many other birds of prey also. Also some rare species which are not always seen in this area. Like Ruppel's vulture and African species, other like spotted eagle or Barbary falcons. It's a place, although we speak of migration, it's not always migration what we see. Sometimes birds pass which are not migrating because it's juvenile dispersal or just looking for food. Here we have some black vultures. We have Bonelli's eagle, Imperial Eagle, golden eagles. Juveniles are just dispersing. It's a very interesting place because you see a lot of not only birds but interactions. When thousands of birds concentrate in the same area, this means that there's some friction, interaction between them. It's a spectacular place to see hunting, persecution, and also see birds facing the sea, the water of the sea, and interactions with gulls or with other birds. And also, when the wind is strong and they can't cross, then birds group together to wait to cross. So, thousands of birds wait. These are black kites on the ground waiting for the wind to die down so they can cross. The figures we talk about of gliding birds are 500,000 every year. 2 species of storks and several hundreds of thousands of birds of prey. We've compared this with populations in Europe, and what we find is that for some species, what we count in the strait is a lot higher than what we think is in the continent, on the whole continent. So there you have by black kites, honey buzzard. But for other species in the strait, we count very few compared what we think we have on the continent of Europe. We've worked with radar to see the behavior of birds on the coast. We've also worked with tracking of birds. Here we have harriers, ospreys crossing the strait and the Alboran Sea. What we see is that many birds, especially the great gliders, concentrate. The whole of the population of Europe passes through, but for birds more active, with more active flights, such as falcons or ospreys, then the migration spreads out a lot more, and only a very small proportion crosses by the strait because they don't need it so much. They can cross large distances of sea. Here we have the context of what we count in the Strait of Gibraltar. They are very, very high figures, and this is the migration, the average of birds through the strait. Here we have in mid-February about 2,000, 1,000 gliders are crossing every day. But in March, it's really spectacular, the crossing. And so the birds that cross the strait come from Western Europe. We've analyzed banded birds, and we know that they are going either to North Africa, to the Maghreb, to spend the winter, or most of them go to the great deltas of Central Africa, and then young ones, they spend 1 or 2 years in Africa until they return. We've also calculated what it means for birds to cross the sea. It's often they've never crossed the sea before. The mortality is not very high, but of course it's hundreds of birds. We've watched birds to see how they cross, how they use the winds, how they compensate for them, what height they go up so they can cross easily. And when they cross the sea, they use a lot of altitude, and it tends to be dramatic when the exhausted bird arrives the other side. And if they can't cross, then they wait, as we said. If they can't cross, then sometimes they look for other places. They go on a coast to Portugal to try and cross somewhere else, but there are no other places. Sometimes they simply don't cross and they stay here to spend the winter. Also, we've studied how they cross the desert, which is the great barrier for birds, where most of the mortality occurs. In the case of juveniles, one of every three doesn't make it in the desert. It's a great barrier for these birds. And also, we have walked a lot with interactions with wind parks. As far as small birds are concerned, over 130 species migrating. Daytime migration is dominated by swifts, martins, swallows, bee-eaters, finches, and also the night migration over the strait is spectacular and massive. We've estimated over 2,000 or 3,000 birds per kilometer of sky. Even in autumn nights, over 10,000 per night and per mile an hour can cross. More than 1 million birds at night. And the final list is about 30,000 in the Mediterranean. They're very, very good, very high figures. As for seabirds and coast birds, about 1 million seabirds cross. They have the main species, the shearwaters, gannets, skewers, puffins. Also, there's seabirds every year pass by. They include birds which breed in the Mediterranean, and after breeding, they go to the South Atlantic or to the Gulf of Biscay, as shearwaters do, or some breed in North Atlantic and spend the winter in the Mediterranean. Also, we work specifically with Balearic shearwater, which is in danger of extinction. And so, to finish this view, after 25 years, you get quite a perspective of changes. On one hand, we know that the Strait has allowed us to get to know in more detail the magnitude of populations which move through Western Europe, and we've seen that it's a methodology that's very useful for follow-up for species that are difficult. The changes in calendars, very quick ones, when for migratory birds, date is very important. The calendars, they have to be in the right moment and the right time. The synchronizing resources and migration. What we see is that in the last 40 years, especially the last 25, calendars are changing a lot, a great deal. The spring migration is much earlier, and autumn, it varies. Some species have advanced migration, some almost a month, such as storks. And what happens is the period they spend with us has changed. But then there are others, especially short distance migrators, then it hasn't changed or has even been delayed. Also, numbers have changes. And we have positive news and negative news. The good news is that most of the species of storks and birds of prey are increasing. They've been increasing since the 70s, since the population disaster they had in the 60s and 70s. They're recovering. That's a good, because that means that the conservation policy is having its result. The bad news is that most other birds, of small birds, are decreasing. Even birds that were very common, not so common, only a third part of the swallows and a seventh part of the swifts there were 40 years ago. So that's very worrying. Obviously, not always the changes that we have leave population changes. Sometimes we count more, we count less, not because there are more or less, because something that's happening. Many of them, birds, are shortening migration. They don't migrate, or they don't migrate so much, and so they don't reach the strait. Some species which are increasing in Europe, and however, we count less and less in the strait. We've analyzed ringed buzzards from the 50s up to now. We've seen how the migration distance is decreasing. They are stopping migration. This is interesting because it means that we have to, with our conservation policy, we have to have measures and models which are much more flexible because things are changing very fast. We also have new species which join our ecosystem. We have more than 30 species which from Africa which are colonizing Europe. So we have the Rupel's vulture, little swift. They're making that leap from Africa and the south of peninsula is more and more like the north of Africa and we also have some changes which we don't really understand very well. There are more eastern migrants which cross this over here. So Harriers or Chiff-Chaffs or so what we are working recently, we know that the intensity of the wind is increasing, which means that the gateway, as it were, is closed more and more often. So we want to know how this can affect migrant birds. And so to finish, what about the future? Really, well, I don't have a crystal ball, but what we have seen over this last 25 years is that we have populations which increased. We are capable of conserving birds if we propose it, but then at the same time, we are also capable of having them all disappear before our eyes. So it means that we have the good and the bad. This also means that we're going to have to build the future ourselves. The future is not written, and the future will be what we want it to be. And I hope that in 25 years' time, there'll be somebody here with a talk saying that talking about the bands of the groups of birds which pass by. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Alejandro. Sorry, we don't have time for the questions. We have to go on with the program. Alejandro will be here the whole morning, so you will be more than welcome to answer any question that anybody can have in the audience. So in a very short moment, we'll have Mercede Rodriguez, who I can see her somewhere. Yes, can you come here, please, so that we can upload your presentation? Thanks.
Presentation, which is called New Photographic Horizons from Norway by Mercede Romero, who is already preparing her PowerPoint. So she's a wildlife photographer from Extremadura. She likes to think of herself as a born conservationist from Monfragüe. She will take us to the northern Arctic Circle in search of spectacular northern lights and a great variety of Arctic species. There's images of large whales and birds of the Arctic, and also we will enter the region of Finnmark in North Norway, in Sami territory, where we will get to know a little more of their culture connected with nature since a very young age. And they has worked on numerous conservation projects. Currently, she's leading photographic tours in different countries, following the steps of the most emblematic species, and also she's in the nature tourism company. Over to you, Merce.
Good morning to you. We are trying to upload the presentation, but is that okay? Yeah, we should only see that. Okay. Let's try if it works. If you want, I can do it from the computer. Okay. Sorry, technical problems. So as I am going to talk about Varanger, our last project that we are working, my name is Mercede Romero, and really it's really difficult to say what I'm doing because I'm a little bit in all the projects. I coordinate the reserve of SCUA. I will talk at the end. This is the last project that I've started. I also write in a SCUA company that developed this magazine. I'm a photographer of wildlife, and since I'm very young. Sorry, it's not working. Well, I'll do it from the computer then. Okay, as I was saying, I'm always at the beginning of development of all the projects. Together with another partner, we look for the areas that are stronger as far as nature is concerned. We believe the potential of the places so that we can sell it and show it to other people. So what we really want is we understand nature photography as a recourse to make the places more profitable. These are the network where we are working. It's true that we have also worked in other countries out of European countries, but now we are mainly concerned in Europe, in Spain, with 3 reserves, one in Monfragüe, another one in Valles Viñas, that is in a village in Ceuta, where I'm from, about 1 hour from here, another one in Sierra Morena. We are also in Italy with another great number of reserves, then in Romania, where we start with this company. Latvia, when it was the last incorporation, but the project that I'm going to talk about, the one that we are developing in Norway. I've put this slide because I think, I wanted you to have an idea what we are doing, who we are. We have developed a series of many natural reserves all over, Europe. And I've only put that so that you have it as an example. I think we can't see properly. Yeah, I wanted you to know all the projects that we have done on the left in Finland, then India, South Africa, Croatia, that we designed, Guatemala. This one is a photography here in Monfragüe, and the one at the top in Norway. I think that some slides are skipped. I'm going to try to do it. Okay, I'll try to do it as it comes. I would like to take this presentation as a trip. I would like you to start this trip, and we will go to Varanger without moving. Really, it's a project that we have done during the pandemic period. 2 years ago, I left with this colleague, who is the director of the company. We went to look for places. It was an area that we have visited before with some clients and where we have developed some projects, but not in such a way, not in this kind of project. The photography that I'm using is a colony, one of the biggest colony of Black Lake Kitty Walk, and it is Kitty Wake. This is where we have one of the biggest that we have in Europe. To see more or less the area, let's go. We are going to Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. What you see in the square is the peninsula, Varanger Peninsula, the one I want to talk about. And this slide I used because I want you to see where we are situated. And this is where the village, you can see it. It is the situation at the level of the North Cape, that is the northern point in Europe. So this is where the whole story starts. So this is reality. I don't want to presume about it. We knew this place. We have known it for many years. It's a reference for the bird watchers and the photographers, and it is a very small village and we bought the village. There are small houses that we bought, and you prepare them. They are the guest house where the people can go and see all the photographic itinerary that we have prepared. The landscape, we are always, the Varanger is the tundra, and we can see when we move a little bit towards the south, we can see the forest where we are working, the Oberkast, the national park of Oberkast Park. The reserve is situated. We are at 500 kilometers from the Arctic polar at the top. I put this slide so that you could have an idea of the different points that we have really seen as interesting from a photographic point of view. We have decided about some spacing about some places because of the species of the different elements that was there. I'm going to show you all the different itineraries. Varanger is very famous for the fjord. The fjord that is behind. I can tell you that even if we are bird lovers, animal lovers, there are a lot of people who go there just to look at the landscape. And this is me with my dog, so just for a walk. I live there for a year and some months. What could be with just a walk with a dog can become different because the sky that you have are totally different. It's a magic sky. We are in a very special place, and it just makes the difference. Can you imagine? Just look at the window. Through the window we have here in this one that is close to the sea. You can see from the window this kind of skies. It's a place that is really wanted for the birds, but also for the northern lights. I'm going to give you several examples of this. And what really led us to develop this project was some species that were not very difficult to see, and that's not the reason why they are not interesting, but they were very easy to take a photo of. But if you want to take a very precise photo, or for a photographer who really wants a perspective, well, we decide to, and here we have 11 years of experience, we create a structure that were designed for this kind of species. To work here is totally different. in other reserves, because I've worked in Danube reserve, etc. But here is totally different, because it's much more complicated, because the weather conditions are not different, because they are, for them it's very easy, but for somebody from Extremadura who has never seen snow, you can imagine the contrast. Well, so this hard is personalized to make these photographies, leave us other kind of you can go closer. This is the King Rider, the star. It is the special duck. It looks like as if it comes from a book. Since very young, I've seen it, and I found that I thought it was something unreal, but it is true. I've seen it really, and there are some species that is a very it's a species that due to the climate change we can see, where the Staler's rider, it's not the species that we're looking for. I just want to see how the birds come very close to the hide, because this is a normal photo as it has taken. We haven't cut off anything, even if those ones are more common and we don't pay attention. The Abeldas, they have some kind of lights. There are the long-tricked duck. This red that you can see is another thing that we think a lot when we do these hides. They are all seabirds, and they come to the different places, the pier, so you can see them. We give them a boat that is there, that is all red. We look for the position of the hide, trying to look for this kind of colors, because then we have unusual photos. We also play with these photos of the hiders are done in winter, but the other birds like photo pole are done in different Farapole are done in different periods. Now, tiger territory, some tundra is a combination of both sceneries. In this territory, I'm going to talk about some species associated with those places that also turn this project much more interesting, because at the end our idea is to move not only from land but also sea and forest. Imperial Eagle, then that is the Golden Eagle. It's a couple that I have done. It's a very special, because the photo is not only the click, but it's also what they tell you that was a couple of white-tail, and they were done without anything special. Birds there are trust us much more than what we are used to. The Sampelli, European Sampelli. Some prefer in Europe. I love photography in winter with the snow. Those wax wings are really are really fantastic. They give us really romantic cliché photos. This is a bird that we don't give a lot of importance, because we can see it in common sandpiper. And for me, who can see this bird in a river, in a stream, in fact, we can see it in the forest as well. The partridge, or this partridge is, you think that is going to ease to see it. When you have this slide, we can see it, because it is, this photo was taken in June. It's a ptarmigan, but when it is completely white, you can't see it properly. And I put this photo because, well, I want also to show you that this photography was taken with, you know, that nowhere we spent 3 months without seeing the sun, and then we don't have night. So, and this photo was taken with the midnight sun. It was 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I want to tell you that the photography opportunities, if you really love photography, you really get very tired, you get exhausted, because the species are very active and you can't stop taking photos. Even if this bird has been punished here in Spain, a very emblematic Urugal. This bird is very easily found. We've seen the capercaillie. It's a really fantastic, because it doesn't have the same situation here. So this bird is another star there that is really the oak owl. We have with this bird we didn't have much, weren't very lucky during 2 years because of the lack of food, but when we see it, that was really fantastic. This is I try not to wait to stop too much. Well, we have seen a Siberian jay and said now this is a typical landscape. The species that are associated with those ecosystems are the the red-topped diver. This one was done at 5 o'clock in the morning, so sometimes the light is not so strong, and it is the best moment to take a photo. We are not used to see this bird with those colors, but a character of the Varanger is because most of those limicolas are reproduced and live there between May, June, and July. These waders have the best colors, either this one or those ones that are the tough. Is a bird that is really impressive, and it's really fantastic, all the shows, so they are really entertaining. This bird is the skunk. There is another species, and finally these birds that are the snow bunting. So we have a period between March and April. They are very active, and we can see them 2 weeks. This photo was taken just next to the guest house, the one that we bought, where we are developing the project, and it has been taken there. We have them 2 or 3 weeks until they decide to leave, and that's it. We have really fantastic photos. So now, more in the summer, we have this bird that is really that is the short-eared owl. This another species that is also talked a lot. This falcon, that is the Gulf falcon. There are a couple that has been there for more or less 10 or 12 years, and the last year we could follow it up. They have the 2 chicks, and for the people who don't sleep, you can enjoy it all night to see them without disturbing them, obviously. But it's true that you have different fantastic. This animal, the stoat that kills this animal, they kill the hares. More the different colonies of kittiwake, but yes, I wanted to show the mimetism, because something that I always surprised, how in winter they are completely white. So I took this one in June, when I drew that it was something we had never developed. This kind of itinerary was completely new, and when you go into the sea, you can see other species, and the temple of the whales. So it's fantastic. Oh, sorry, I don't have the name of this in Spanish. blue whale, other big whales. So you can say they come very close, and there are some people that can go into the water with them. They're not really aggressive, all very controlled. Dolphins, white with a white nose, the bottlenose dolphin. And when you go a little bit deeper, 3 kilometers further from the sea, you see these two birds, and those ones, I'm talking about the different storms that we have suffered and enjoyed as well, because if you can tell, it is lovely. So in this sea, I'm going to show you what happened. The birds are have to go through situation. They are really heroes when it comes to survive, because what they need refuge, and one of the islands where they can find this refuge is to find the Ornoya Island, where more than 100,000 sea species can be seen at that distance. This is and you can walk next to them, and you can see a lot of those birds. But the puffin is really the one that is the star, and it is what offers. You have two periods, winter or summer. In summer we can see it like this, the famous that of the different puffins with the fish in the mouth, but this part is unknown. In winter it's really interesting to go behind them and try to take a photo of a different fight for the territory, for the birding, the nesting place. So the hunt, the puffin hunt, is really fantastic. I took this picture last winter. It was something that I couldn't do. It's really a period, the best period to do it. And when you have this, it's a personal satisfaction. So the image first starts in your mind. So I really wanted a photo of this, the face of this puffin, and we can only get that in summer with the different colors of the plants. I'm going to give you other photos of what we can take. Another one that is really, even if it's not easy to find it. This is a seagull, the white seagull, ivory gull. This photo was taken next to the guest house where we work. It's very easy to find in every rock. This year it has been the year where we could really take in each rock. We could find one white-tailed eagle. With this, I'm going to conclude, even if it doesn't mean anything. The logo of SCUA was taken from a photo that has been taken by the director of SCUA. He was going to do bird watching, and from a photo to move it to a drawing, it became the logo. Just once I went 2 years ago, we started this project. The first photo that I took in Varinger, in this area, it was this SCUA. I believe a lot in signals, in the signal. So I think it was how I received this, and that's why I wanted to show you this photo. Now I'm going to tell you this. I will end up with this. Another project that we have done with all this that we have done with the Varinger, that has not been little, and where COVID has brought some bad things, but also good things. That was the time. And one of the projects that we have developed, that is the last one that we have recently released, is a magazine. Is combination of anthropology and nature, and it has a report of all the what we have done in Varinger. So if I don't have time to talk about you know that we are in the stand, and if anyone wants to, you can come and get it. Sorry if I've talked too quick, but I don't have time. Thank you.
just one thing more. There's a video of a couple of minutes as a summary.
No me va a dejar verlo. No sé si lo puedo interactuar con este. Es que no soy capaz aquí. Bueno, yo lo veo aquí, pero ahí no. Es que no sé cómo lo ha hecho él, que lo ha pasado desde aquí. Aquí no me deja sin...
Vale, pero escúchame, voy a apuntarlo.
Seem to be having one or two problems.
Muchas gracias, Mercede.
Thank you, Mercede, and congratulations for this fantastic work and those beautiful images. Mercede, we don't have time for more, but as she said, she is in the stand in School Nature if you want. And we're going to continue in a short time with the next presentation of artists if they are here to come to start organizing. third and last day of technical conferences, FIO 2022, that is organized by the Tourism Office Department of Regional Government. Now we're going to have landscapes at small scope, artistic vision, where we have natural artist Manuel Sosa. We have Lucia Gomez, Pablo Jiménez, José Antonio Santiago, and Esther Chavez. So the territory, as it is by population, is the result of the mixture of different activities and human activities. In this definition that has been shortly summed up, we can see and feel the heritage, and this is the basis this is the basis of this conversation to Esther, who is going to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to thank the FIO organization, the Bird Fair, and especially Vanessa Palacios for the opportunity. I think that you all know that for many, many years, this fair has put its faith in illustration, and this can be seen easily by having a glance at the program or looking at one of the tents, or just looking at any of the posters which year after year announce the event. I'd like to thank particularly the opportunity to offer bird lovers these spaces where we can get to know the work of artists and nature illustrators, and how they acquire their work in multiple workshops which have been carried out during this weekend. And also this place is for speaking about art, which is very uncommon in this type of event. I think it's necessary to thank this integrating and comprehensive view from the organization. And secondly, I'd like to thank the participants that those who have wanted to take part here with us. So allow me to that probably you all know. I'll start with Pablo. Pablo Jiménez Olavarria was born in Valladolid and studied engineering, although he's now been painting exclusively for about a year. When he was 10 years old, he spent all his savings on a bird guide and some binoculars, and since then, he tells us that he's always been observing and painting birds. His work, they don't intend to be descriptive or narrative, because for him, it's a form of looking at the world. I continue with Manuel Sosa, which is to his left. Manuel Sosa was born in Cáceres, although he now lives in the Sierra de Guadarrama, and he's trained as a biologist. He's worked for over 20 years as a nature illustrator for publishers such as Inca, for Santillana, Planeta. He's collaborated with 5 encyclopedias, over 20 books, and many posters, and he works for the Wild Spain series, and he recently is going for especially artistic creation to tribute nature with different techniques and styles. Left of me, I have José Antonio Santiago, who lives in Doñana, where he carries out all his artistic work, and he also works as a graphic designer in the Museum of Science, which is a museum belonging to the CECIF, and his material for all of Europe. He was given the first prize for nature painting by SEO BirdLife. In 2009, he illustrated the FIO poster with some beautiful sandgrouse, which maybe you remember. And so last year, he edited a compilation of his best watercolors of the light of Doñana. And finally, I have left Lucia Gomez Serra, who was born in Barcelona, and she studied fine arts there. She's an artistic painter, she says, and in her work, the landscape tends to predominate, also paying attention particularly to natural environments and the people that live there, although she sometimes goes to the port of Barcelona to draw the boats. Aquarelle is her favorite technique because it's so fresh. She's been mentioned in many times of the prize for science, and at the moment she is teaching a drawing which allows her to experiment continuously with different materials and methods of representation. She's also taken part in several exhibitions, and now she's preparing her next individual Barcelona exhibition. I'll introduce myself as well. I'll take the opportunity. I'm Esther Charles Jordan. I was born in Barcelona, and oh no, I didn't. I was born in Zaragoza. Sorry. Since an early age, I was fascinated by biology, so I've always been in contact with nature. I studied environmental science, and then I trained as an illustrator in Zaragoza. I combined my work as nature illustrator with avifauna technician for different companies, consultants in the environmental field, which allows me to spend most of my time in the country. I've worked on different editorial projects as a designer, as an illustrator, municipal entities, and I've taken part with several NGOs in the designing of products and merchandising. So once the presentations have been made, although the painting of landscape and wildlife art are two pictorial genres which are different, they are very similar. So that's why the title of this talks for these nearby landscape, which often we see when we take our binoculars. We're very used to looking at our field guides and finding the different species posing for us, sometimes with a brief reference to its habitat, although it's not the most frequent. However, when we look at a painting of nature, we see a little more. We see, on the other hand, that the author, the artist, has taken certain artistic license as far as lighting is concerned, or the composition, the textures, and also they've placed the protagonist in a place, in a landscape. If this was not the main raison d'être for the work, if we ask about the definition of landscape, most people would say vague, because it would be vague because it's not difficult. The concept of landscape goes together with perceiving and sensing this environment. So how can we define landscape? Depends on a lot of factors, but especially how we look, what we know of the place, and how we interpret it. And if this perception, which is so personal, if we pass it through a new filter, the eyes and the hands of the artist, then we are entering into a totally different landscape. So following this subjectivity, I would like to share a reflection which Pablo said to me, which seemed very interesting, because he said that landscape only exists when you look at it. When you look away, like when you finish for the holidays, then the landscape just disappears into nothing. So without more ado, with this reflection on landscape, I would like these artists who are with us this morning to tell us why certain landscapes are so attractive to them, what leads them to paint certain things and not others. So if you like, we could begin with Pablo.
For me, painting in the countryside is very something simple, because I love being in the countryside and I love painting, so it's normal for me. For me, to be in the countryside painting is an opportunity that you have to make a more precise observation of what you have in front of you. Because if you are 3, 4, 5 hours looking at the same thing, it's something that we don't normally do because you get tired and you leave. But if you have to paint it, if you have to see exactly what is there, how everything works, so it's a way very deep to look at it. And to look at the place where you are, and in fact the landscape is where it is, where you are, because if it is where somebody else is, it's somebody else's landscape. So painting is a very beautiful and nice way to go deeper into this, to go deeper into what is there. Anything for me is interesting in the countryside, and for me personally, I really need little to start painting and spend the day there. To see what is going on. Manuel, how do you feel this? How do you find this reason for painting? For the landscape in itself has always been something special, wildlife art that Robert Batman, the Canadian illustrator, made popular in the 60s or 60-something. At the end is nothing else than the kind of landscape that are included in a wilder landscape that could be seen in the classic landscape, because it was in the past more a rural area where there is a protagonist that could also be a wild animal and not like a tamed animal, a farm animal, or a cow or sheep. So in a certain way, we haven't discovered anything new, but it's a magic combination. This is this wild life art. Sometimes this landscape doesn't need its wild aspect. It's wild. Sometimes people don't even want this wild aspect, this wild point. But for the other, for them, it's to have they prefer the animal in white. So more important is the description of the animal. So for me, I've tried both ways because I've been an illustrator for 20 years, and being a bit tired or bored because I was following the editor's requirements, I decided to stop illustrating and just start painting, because you are freer, and the protagonists, at least in my paintings, are the landscapes. So sometimes there is not even an animal that I was talking about. So yes, I'm going to begin pass the floor to my colleagues, but for me, in my technique, when there are all elements merging, sometimes there is an animal, and you want the spectator to look, the viewer to look at this animal. But sometimes the landscape is so important for me that the whole painting, the whole landscape that is there. So the animal is the end for me, so that it will be fully included. What do you think of what I've said? For me, I love what you've said, because you always explain in a very comprehensive way. It's really lovely to listen to you talking about painting, my relationship with the landscape. For me, it's the same as when you have somebody that you adore, that you look up to, or you respect a lot. And for me, the landscape for me, when I go out and I want to paint a landscape, for me, it's always the person is like the person that you respect a lot, and that sometimes you kind of fear. So throughout my life, as the topics of today's this debate is always small details that are together with the main character. Why? For this respect that influences a lot, and that is also important. I remember Regla Alonso in his book that said the landscape of Doñana is dominated by the line of the horizon. And it's true that it is really impressive. However, it is a challenge that I have decided to save and start looking at it with other eyes, with another perspective, and I'm eliminating the main subject and I'm devoting to the landscape itself. With different results, obviously, I try to work in a very small format to try to run away from the detail, and that's what I do. The landscape, what I'm really attracted to is the light, the influence of the light, the sunlight when it impacts on the rocks, even in the plants, in the trees, in the different hills, and you get this image that is illuminated. Then you see those contrasts with the shades, with the shadows. So it is really what I try to represent. I also run away to the excess realism, and that there is a stain or the kind of one paint could be interpreted in a different way. So the attraction by the light has always been in my mind, and within this research of the light, with its impact on the natural elements, I'm also looking for what kind of light, what kind of atmosphere or time, what time of the day, what period of the day is the most attractive for you? Is it in the afternoon? Is it at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon? This light that is produced by the light is magnificent. It's really what attracts me in the landscape world. One of the best praise that can be said when somebody sees one of my aquarelle together with what Liz is that they can say it looks that it's cold in your painting. I feel stress, or I can feel the heat. For me, it's one of the best praise that can transmit this kind of season. Yeah, when I see yours, I know he did it in that time because the light of the day, you know what light it is, and this is very good because it's not the same a light in the morning or in the afternoon. It's really funny because from my point of view, I try to run away from the realism, looking for impressionism, but really what I want is produce this sensation of veracity. Yes, but not in a photographic way, exactly, that's it. But in reality is something like vanity, that but the painter tries to go over reality. I don't know if you were here, but with a colleague that spoke about the birds of the paradise, I love this. He didn't have many colors, and he was comparing the photos that he did of this jungle with this green. I don't know, because I am here and there's not so much green here. So you really painted very well to make it so beautiful. He was laughing. Yes, obviously these greens are fake. They are much prettier than reality. So it's a bit kind of boastful. Yeah, it looks like God, but it's true. I know Doñana since my childhood, and the reality as he sees it is obviously much prettier. As far as interpretation understanding how much interpretation, personal view, personal interpretation is there? How much do you bring to what you are painting? 100%.
I think 100%. Everything that you've painted has been by your own hands. It's very difficult to paint reality and improve it. Well, go beyond it from a human point of view. As most of us see, the color is blue. Well, we painters, we try to identify colors, quantify it. You realize well, normal blue from the sky has nuances, pinkish, of many different hints. So if you don't put them in your painting, if you put a mixture that you consider it's nearest to what you're seeing, then maybe it looks cold. But if you mix a lot of other colors and you produce an optic mix, which is certain distances seems to be homogeneous blue, then it's a combination of a lot of colors. That's the difference between the blue being really alive. I think you can exaggerate that, as is often done. So that's done very well as well, because the shadow, the light, the contrast, we can almost say that they're exaggerated. Well, yes, perhaps that's what I'm looking at. Van Gogh, we still think that he looked in that way. A man who he wasn't he was a man with problems, and that's the way he saw things. In the letters to his brother, he said that he exaggerated. I don't exaggerate colors. I see things that way. I'd like to be in the head of many painters to ask them to wonder what they think, because it's you guys to be specific. How do you select, or how do you reject what are you going to paint that day? What is the work you do? What selections do you seek? The light, the moment, how it affects. For example, sometimes I've gone by the same place and it didn't say anything to me, and finally it's the same, and perhaps it was a reflection of something that has been growing in your head. It's the countryside that you discover. You say, well, so if I come over here, sometimes I I take a tree out of the middle, and I interpret as I see it. I take out a building at the back. It's you're interpreting reality, and with you can without any problem take away a tree or something that is not like you want it to be. It's going outside. I think we got to draw. There's a standard which all kinds of light can be attractive depending on how you interpret them. The light of dusk, they are the most beautiful because they give a warm light to everything. So you maybe don't see the dawns. Well, don't tell everybody. Yeah, I'm a daytime person. Yeah, well, I'm a bit of a disaster, and I haven't really seen many dawns. Well, that's everybody. Everybody is different, but it's true. But many sunrises are really impressive. Do you always work in the country, or do you sometimes take notes and then work in the study? How do you tend to do things, Pablo? I tend to work practically always in the country. Some things you have to do in the studio because there's no help for it. If you want to paint Sofia Loren, then well, you can go. But if what you want to do is, if you can have what you're painting in front of you, I think it's much more interesting because you have no intermediary and you have it there in front for you, something just for you. I think that's a luxury that we should. Do you always go out to the country with all your gear? Well, I have to go. Well, I always forget. I have to go back because I always forget something. But well, I'm more a studio painter. I take notes in the country. The countryside is your school, and the drawing is the basis of everything. But also you have to look at a lot of things. So many hours in this studio, and painting in the field requires such a lot of time. I spend so much time in the studio. When I go out in the countryside with the dog, so I like to walk and not stay always in the same place. So I do little watercolors. It's pure drawing. So as I walk, I analyze a lot what I see to try to look at the colors in the shade. They're so difficult to break down. So you're pure countryside. Yes, we started going out to the countryside to take notes with small watercolors, but in the end, you get so immersed that you go up a level. You take bigger and more stuff out to the country, and then now I end and I finish paintings right in nature. I finish my paintings in the field with some complication, not just a note of color. Work that I could do in the studio. I can perfectly well finish it in the countryside. I haven't done that actually with the landscape. I'm working in the study, in my studio. 85% of my work is done in the field with all the gear that you mentioned, taking them everywhere. These landscapes, for example, that we have here, that's done in the studio because I'm still not ready to do something like that purely in the countryside because I like working the country with wet on wet, as you see, especially the watercolor bottom left. In Doñana, it's rather difficult to use that technique for most of the year because the dryness of the environment. Well, you have to always have a water spray for your watercolors all that, because in July and August it's impossible otherwise to work in wet on wet in Doñana. If you want me to stop any of the images that we're showing, then do tell me if you want to make any specific commentary. Might be interesting to talk of technique. What is an interesting thing in some of Manolo's watercolors? For me, it's very, very difficult to fit a figure in a landscape. But Manolo does it very well. It's very, very difficult. So how do you paint a bird or you paint a landscape? But to do a mixture is very, very complex, and it seems easy, but it needs a lot of knowledge. So the barn owl, no, the, the, the other one in the barn, or well, this one as well. I think they are compositions that have a great deal more work attached. So then you contribute new things, and that's how we work. The painting, the light of the sun, because it's this one. It's an old house in poor condition, but this captures the reflections in many pictures. Like music, you have to look for the rhythm. So here, this how the light falls on the beams on the facade. It's is what is the interest of this painting. The barn owl tends to spend the day in these places. Although there's such a lot of light comes in that the bird can't sleep very well. In somewhere I read that if you put the protagonist off center, then it gives us certain otherwise the spectator has to travel more through the work. Without the barn owl, then the painting would be much less. As the main beams that support the structure of this kind of roof. There's a I don't know if you can see a kind of like a totem there, like the barn owl. And she brought me one, and it was identical. That's an anecdote. There's very little paint used with it on the soil. It was I just bathed it in ochre and let it drip. All the shade is practically dripping. It just has the first layer of paint, very monochromatic. Very not a lot of color variety. When I go to draw out in the field, what I try to capture is to get the composition. It's a way of defining what scene you're going to choose. And I'm good at this, I think, because I clarify things a lot. You have a framework that you use. I asked if Pablo had it because I was amazed when you get in front of a landscape. He said no, that I don't. He says he doesn't use it. I think that it's something very simple to focus, and I'm surprised. But I think that the difficulties of the pictures are different for me. I paint, and that's it. I don't think about it too much. The horizon. If you want to put the horizon a bit in a different place, then you do it. But maybe it's about losing respect. I don't think you need a special ability for focusing. Painting is continually losing respect for everything, always overcoming fear. First the empty page, and then because a new work is is always a challenge. However much experience you have, you always get nervous. It's, there's some people who take some device or applications or even take a photograph, and then they do the square that you want, the 3x3 or whatever. But when you've done it several times, it's that's more of beginner. I think it's a typical error. You have to paint too near. You have to paint a long way away. How can I start to paint from that oak 200 meters away? But you can see a lot more. That it's like driving. Looking too close. You need to look far away. In this oil of Pablo, for example, we can see a little what you were talking about, Manuel. We have this perspective that you achieve with the path, and you can get very far because the trees are a long distance away in the background. Painting, really, the life of the painter is a life of deceiving people, because you have to put what you see on a flat surface. It's just it's a trick. You can make a sculpture if you're skillful. There's the sculpture. You can touch it. You can turn it around. But if it's of stone then you avoid the color. There's something there but painting is just a lie. I think the dictionary says painting is a case of reproducing 3 dimensions, and really we have only 2. So it's just a trick. So I was very struck by the fact why the Greeks do such wonderful sculptures. That kind of sculpture, no progress has been made, but painting, it's taken many years to up until the 16th century. The photos were very nice to look at, but they were rather clumsy. But the humanity has taken time to learn these tricks. You have to paint what's a long way away. Yes, it's these are tricks. Yes, it's playing with perception, with visual perception. Can we take photos as a basis for working, for doing this kind of work? Well, I think I know your opinions about this, but sometimes we can't go to the place. So sometimes photography, can it be used? Should we use it? Not use it? What do you think? As far as I'm concerned, for example, the landscapes I'm doing recently, they're all based on photographs. I go out to paint something else from nature, such as ducks, and on the way I take photos of landscape, and I work on that back home. When I'm painting a bird, I don't do that. I use photography, but in the study, I use photographs that I've taken at the time. It's a support, but I think that your work has to be based 80% or 90% on observation in the field. Although, even if then at home you have 3 or 4 photos to support you, to how you can modulate a certain shadow on the breast or a color reference. But I think there's a lot of difference when you can tell when people have gone into the field and are very observant, and people who don't have that observation basis.
I do it the other way around. The landscape, I do it there with some sketches. The bird that I include, I take a photo, but for me, it's much more difficult to work indirect with the photo than the landscape. The landscape for me, I do it directly. For me, yeah, that's why I like to go and see the scene, the position, what is the key element. So I've, in fact, always reduced to the habit of each one. Yes, I think you have to adapt to the way you work. And use the method that you have. I sit in front of some birds, for example, and I can do it directly. And those birds are just moving around, and in 4 hours I can do it. But if you are in a dune, for example, for me, I get completely blocked. But I think it's normal. It depends on the vice or the habit that you're used to. And also, if you shouldn't be afraid of using all kind of technology to progress, because all this is as it was. No, with kind of artificial, we should use all the artificial, all the tools that we have. For painting, everything is perfect. Otherwise, we don't have anything left for us in our lives. So we can use all what we have. That means if you want to paint a bottle and you have the bottle, yeah, just paint it. It doesn't mean that it's a sin. I think that if you have the bottle and you can touch it and you can just go around and see, I think it's more realistic. It's really a pity just not say, because you will see the shape, the color, the light. So if you want to paint something that is in Cuba and you're not in Cuba, you need to use photos. So in fact, you can do whatever you want. But I think it's a pity if your vacation is painting and see the world. It's probably better to go and see what you have close, because some of the things it has a lot of part of yourself. You spend a lot of time, probably when you were young, and something that you can really do it with something probably that more than with something that you have, that you paint from a photography, because that's something that has been taken by somebody else. Sometimes photography do it so well that you can turn into a slave. All the paintings that are done, the portrayal that are done, are based on photography. So this frozen thing, the frozen image that we see a lot in the image, I'm not photogenic. It's because they have picked up a second but we are a whole set of gestures. If the photography didn't exist, I will have to go and see, and for example, the face wouldn't be today different, to change completely all the time. So this is difficult nowadays. We have the photo of the person, and you kind of do the same. You have a technical, you might have a spectacular technical, but yes, what is more interesting, the technique, to dominate the technique, or the result of that the result was more relevant? What do you think that the most important is perfect? And no, it's an addition of several things. Many times there are more beauty in an aquarelle, in the textures, in the shape, the way that the different paint has been done. There are several aspects. So the technique is so beautiful that sometimes it can save something that is more common or uglier. And it's the other way around. Sometimes people are impressed by the hyper-realism. For me, it's very cold. The technique, if you have the technique, you can avoid it. If you don't have it, you don't have it. That's it. It's always good to have technique. Another thing is that if you get a slave to, or you stay there. I think photography is a magic instrument, a magic tool, but we must use it in doses. If you have an escape, for example, what you're going to paint better is what you love. If you love it yourself, you have to analyze it. It's a tool because when it's raining and you can't be in situ painting, you have finished studying, and at home you can finish it in the study. Thanks to the photography that Rembrandt or Velázquez didn't have, they would probably have killed for a camera. They have tried to the invent of the dark camera. That was horrible. That was you put all the people in the position that they wanted in the painting. Everything was eliminated, and all this light was going through a small wall that was ejecting. So the image is particular. So from the right to up, down, and so you can imagine the painter trying to do that and asking for them not to move. We didn't use that a lot, I think, but they didn't use it. I think they didn't use it. They didn't. It is technique of the dark camera. I don't think they used it a lot. There was some academy that the painters were really. When they finished, they really knew a lot of anatomy. The painting, the Meninas, it's fantastic. The invention of the photography also just releases us from the faithful to the reality, because the technique has overwhelmed in a way. So obviously we didn't need to paint it perfectly because the camera does it. So it's a new challenge, that's true. But it doesn't make sense if you have a dishwasher. Why do you wash your dish by hand? So all this is true. The photography has released us from doing it so perfectly. You can do it badly, and in this badly done, you can find your way. So you feel that it gives you it takes off pressure, because you think that for the perfect image we have the camera. So it's very dangerous. Photography, many just skips the drawing, and the drawing, you can't skip the drawing. You must know the shape that you are drawing and not let you lead by the photography. Otherwise, what do you bring? I'm not saying this for you. What I'm saying, if you want to have an image that is similar to a photo, it's better to have a photo and start doing something else, to go for a drink, for example. Yes, it opened a new challenge. To be too realistic is a bit boring. Sometimes I have some kind of realism that helps me to be focused. I am in an object and I see how can I do it. It's a way to kind of see who you are. That means if you don't, if you want to take a picture, and if you want to have kind of a recipient, just buy it. And there's a difference between picking up a photo and painting it, and picking up a photo and give an interpretation of you. It's not to try to do it badly. It's just, oh, your photo looks like a photo. Sometimes the artistic, when people say, the people say it looks like a photo, because they are in fact praising your technique, but you don't read it. And sometimes obviously the lights are not real. This is a vision that you have, and you have taken up some things. And sometimes the paintings have the power to make surgery, aesthetic surgery. You can just take off what is not nice. We can kind of create something that will make or build up this composition, that you can modify some kind of elements. How can the landscape painting or wildlife art contribute to the conservation of those landscape, of those spaces that we are losing? Manuel probably remembers. I started with painting landscape thanks to the Nature Review magazine. years ago, there was a report that paint to conserve, to preserve, and I've always liked painting animals. When I saw this magazine and read this article, and when I saw the paintings of Robert Batman, I was really felt really incredible, impressed. So when I saw all these painters, American and Canadian painters, who, all the paintings they were doing were for those conservation association. It was a way to make people aware of the importance of conserve all those places. In Europe, ANF, Artists for Nature Foundation, that has had many projects throughout the year, one of them here in Extremadura. So I think it's a different way to make people aware and to show nature in a different way to public. In this way, drawing, the fact that we draw something, what you're doing is you are understanding what you are seeing. You start understanding. There is a saying, it's not my saying, the sentence says, if you draw it, you understand it. If you understand it, you love it. If you love it, you preserve it. You conserve it, either for birds, landscape. And I think this is what drawing and painting can contribute to. This is the respect. You capture it and you start investigating, understanding, and you have this point that we can't eliminate, we can't destroy it. And I think there is a little point that could push people into drawing what they are seeing. Because the other day we were in those rock, La Portilla, and when you start drawing and you see the rocks, all this capacity that you are in all this capacity of observation, you probably spend an hour or two, and then all this information, it goes into your brain. You have it in your brain, and it will take time to forget about it. Now I forget the eyes. Well, I don't need to forget the eyes, but I can see the rock, the shape, the structure, and this is the message. Yes, of course. When you draw a bird, a path during hours, then you can't take it out of your brain. It is something that stays for a long time, and there is a point. Even if we don't want to be a professional in the world of art, in the practice of drawing and painting, it's something fantastic, and you remember so many things. You have so many things in your mind, in your memory, that is really. Well, it's something that I think we shouldn't do, and it would be a general practice to be there observing, and try to copy it. And when you copy it, you paint it, you draw it, obviously this shape stays, remains, and you learn. You shouldn't be so quick. One week, a bird, and little by little you start learning a lot. And what is to end, and then if there are questions, let's see, the art nowadays in this art. How can you see it in the Spanish panorama? Is there a next generation for that? For wildlife art, people who love painting, do you think there are enough people for the next generations? I think in Spain, yes, it's fantastic. Yes, I think you just have to have a look at the social network, and you see the quantity of people who more or less, better or worse, with more or less professionality, to paint animals, nature. It's something incredible. And my colleagues who came from Hungary and Belgium say they were saying in Spain is incredible. In Spain and United Kingdom, you are many people in this world, and there was a boom in the image world. As I come from advertising in the 80s, 90s, I don't know if you remember, all the ads and the press were all based on photographies. The photography agency, Photostock, etc., were born very quickly. I mean, they were set up very quickly. In 2000, the tendency changed completely, and the advertising just went towards more drawing illustration, and nature illustration, scientific illustration became much more important. I agree totally compared to when I started in painting in '96. We were 4 people, more or less, and another thing is there a market for that? Yes. If it is really accepted, so that will help with this passion. So the painter has to live as well. I think yes. Otherwise, in normal conditions, there are more and more, let's say, a hobby towards painting. A good painting, probably, the reason is secondary. But when we talk about wildlife art, I think there are more and more every year. And I think it's good because yes, if there is a crisis, a war, on a pandemic like this, we'll have something more. I think painting, now the image dominates the world, and everything goes very fast. But painters, with all the problems that we have, the painting always has something else. You are painting the street and people look with nice, they don't buy anything, but they look saying, oh my love that you're here. And the little power that we have to poison, in a way, the other people's view. Yes, I've seen a place, and I remember your place. So that means, in a way, you have a kind of influence in the way of he or she sees doing. This is a little power. It doesn't give you food. It doesn't give you, but it's quite good. I think that there is something that is there, is the fact that drawing nature, or the practice to go out and paint and draw. I have to say it because I talked to many women, and this happened to them, and they were going to paint, and they find a situation that they were kind of afraid. This is a problem that women have. It's not that you find an animal, it's because you find a man, a weird man. Yeah, there are very weird people all over the world. I think this happened to me. I went to the countryside, I take the car, you go on your own, and you start painting, and I find you look for a peaceful place when there are not many people. At that moment, you see a man who sits next to you, and they start talking, things that a bit weird, and I think this happened to everybody, yes. Or probably women, is worse. I found some situation I find weird. I was a bit afraid. Yes. We are like magnets. People see an aquarelle, and I say, I go for there. But when I go out, I see, let me see who I'm going to meet. I read that there is a very good remedy to fight against loneliness. If you feel lonely, you start drawing in the street, and you will have people coming to see you. This is a kind of magnet. Even if you draw badly, yes. I feel better painting in a city because I know the city, I know what I'm going to find. You pay attention to your wallet, but you go to the countryside where you don't have a kind of protection that somebody can help you. 5 minutes. If I don't know if somebody has any question, we have the microphone. Something about the methodology of some artist in particular, or something that is there, I don't know. We have said everything. We didn't stop talking. Any question? Take advantage because you have great artists here to get some of their knowledge or advice. No. So you have you have said everything so clearly. I want to thank you a lot for having been here in the third day of conference. Congratulations on all the work that you've done. Those images are incredible, and we hope to see you soon here. Thank you. Thank you to you too.